Hello and welcome to this episode of the Hello First Name podcast, Season 2. My name is Rasmus Hårlind, author of the book Hello First Name, and the theme of this season is how to solve the content crisis for personalization. Let's dive in. Hello everybody and welcome to this episode of the Hello First Name podcast. This season of the Hello First Name podcast is very much centered around updating this book, Hello First Name, which I accidentally turned upside down. And basically that is what we're doing. We're turning the things a bit upside down here. A lot has happened with generative AI since the book came out, and we're actually researching during this podcast to make sure that we get the right update of the book with a lot of generative AI. And to sort of make that go down more easily, we are working on some models for instance, the CX layers that you can find in a previous episode. So looking very much into how, in the same way as we have the data layer, that we see the content layer working and being sort of stitched and made efficient through the use of generative AI. Before the two meet, the data layer and the content layer meet in the personalization layer. So today, to help us discuss this, we have what I would say is some kind of young gun celebrity tech entrepreneur, Villads, Leth from Alvas.ai. Villads, welcome to the show.
Celebrity, that's a new one. But thank you, Rasmus, for inviting me. It's I think it's going to be fun deep diving into how you can use generative AI in personalization.
Yeah, because you are in fact quite a pioneer, and I know you're also being fairly loud on LinkedIn in terms of saying that you are building the next unicorn. And there's a lot of followers looking at you and looking at how young people can indeed be tech entrepreneurs and with high ambitions. So you're leading the charge here at Alvas.ai. You're building a generative AI product that is supposedly changing the ways that brands create email content. But before we dive too much into the tech, can you tell us a bit about your background and how you ended up co-founding Alvas, and what was the problem you originally set out to solve, and is it still the same one?
Yeah. So maybe I can start on where Alvas is today, and then I can backtrack from there. So Alvas, we're a two-person company, soon to be three. So two founders, and then we've just about
50% growth. Yeah.
We have 33 customers and an MRR of 17,300 USD, and our cash flow positive. And we've been in business for about 2 years, a little less than 2 years. Started in San Francisco, where I went to learn from the best company builders in the world, and spent about half a year there, sort of learning how to build great technology startups. So that was where the company was founded. Initially, the purpose or the idea from our perspective to build this company was that we could see generative AI being extremely useful, and especially in marketing, where you just need to write content that converts customers. But one of the problems with generative AI was that, or is still to this day, that you have an infinite possibility space of content that can be created. Therefore, you need some sort of technology that can figure out what is the right content and then automatically improve that content. And that's what traditional machine learning is great at. So we started the company just to build any sort of product in the e-commerce marketing world that uses generative AI to create content, and then traditional ML to optimize that content to find out what works best. And through some prototyping and testing and etc., we found out that email marketing, especially retargeting emails, so when you have like bottom funnel flows, etc., that's a really good place
abandoned basket, abandoned browsing, I don't know, price drop on wishlist items, stuff like that.
Yeah, that was a good place to start. So that was where we started.
And maybe just, for those who are unfamiliar with Alvas.ai, just maybe briefly explain what the product does now and how our brands are using it.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is say we have two legs to stand on. So the first leg, which was the one we also started with, is a one-to-one personalization engine. So we have customers like Shape New Tomorrow or Cool Shop or Fusion. If you're from Denmark, you probably know them. And if you go into their website, you trigger an abandoned cart email or flow. Well, then you're going to receive an email that is 100% AI generated, and it's written specifically for you. So if Cool Shop sends out, let's say, 100,000 different emails per month in their abandoned cart email flow, well, then the AI will write 100,000 different subject lines, 100,000 different headlines, 100,000 different body texts, each uniquely generated to each recipient.
Based on what I've left in the basket and what you know about me as a customer.
Yeah.
Okay, so that could be, I don't know, I saw some examples where you were, for instance, addressing someone who had a pair of pink Birkenstock in the basket, which was, I think the wording was something like "brave choice, Rasmus." Of course, wearing pink Birkenstocks would also be fun for me. And how does it work? How do people respond to this?
So when you say how it works, I assume you're thinking about performance numbers, or
yeah, but also like potential creep outs. Are people being freaked out about it, or what is the general perception of it?
Yeah. So this was one of the things we were also really interested in learning when we started. Is this going to drive more like customer support tickets saying there's something wrong with the newsletter, or is it going to drive higher unsubscribe rates, or what is it going to do? And we've yet to this day to have seen any inquiry to customer support about AI generated content. And in all the tests we've done, there's still no significant changes in unsubscribe rates or etc. What we can see significant changes in are like classic email metrics such as open rates, click-through rates, and conversion rates. We did a case study with Cool Shop where they increased their conversion rate in a traditional A/B test about 55%.
Pretty good. Yeah, who wouldn't want 55% better conversions from their abandoned basket emails?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So. All right. So zooming a bit out from the product and more into sort of the general discussion that we're doing on this podcast. So a big theme is indeed how content and data need to work together to fuel personalization. So one of the key principles in the CX layers framework that I presented actually a few episodes back. In your view, where do brands struggle the most when it comes to scaling content for personalized and for broad communication?
So there are probably 10 different good answers to that question. If I were to pick the one, I like to pick like one unintuitive thing that you're not really like thinking about initially.
Yeah.
And what that typically is for brands that struggle to implement or scale sort of AI solutions that is an autopilot is the idea of needing to have scale initially. So we see a lot of brands when they want to implement AI, they're like firing on all cylinders, saying, "Okay, now it's go time, and we just need to send out as much AI generated content as possible." And we've made that mistake multiple times of trying to do too much too early, because what happens is that the AI will produce something that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It will produce low quality content where someone in the team will receive the email or see a product description or anything which is like this is like too bad quality. Yeah. And when that happens, because it's gonna happen, it's impossible to not have any AI make mistakes. Similar to it's impossible not for humans to make mistakes. But when that happens, you want to make sure that you have control of the AI and that the problem is not too big so that you can actually roll it back. and take our. I have a lot of experience, of course, in our use case implementing AI in email automations, and we did initially when we started, we did like 5 flows at once with one big customer, and then the quality of the AI's output was sort of like there were bad examples,
Okay.
and when that happened, we needed to roll out a fix across all 5 different flows at once. And then we needed to monitor that again. And then one thing didn't work for flow number or flow A, but it worked for flow B, C, D, and E.
Yeah.
And then we had to try and change something in A, and then something broke in flow D.
Super annoying.
And super annoying. So that learning for us was when you're trying out or implementing AI solutions and want to scale them up, the best way to do so is just starting super small. Because once you find those early mistakes or like bad quality outputs, it's much easier to fix when the problem is small. And then you're sure that you have it fixed once you scale the solution.
Yeah. That makes sense. So if I can sort of paraphrase or shorten it, so it's about wanting too much AI generated too fast instead of like maybe like increasing it gradually from a corner where you are quite safe that this is not like violating any brand guidelines or infuriating any customers because it's, I mean, hallucinating and generating weird content.
Exactly. And I think it's tempting to try and scale AI early because it can do it. Like scaling AI solutions is the easiest thing to do because there's like no humans that are like constraining the solution. It's a robot. You can deploy 10 million of them at 1 second.
Yeah.
Because scaling is so easy, the natural thing is just to say, well, we need to go as fast as possible. At least if you're 22 years old and you think you can run super fast.
If you know anyone.
But doing the opposite, starting super small, is definitely something we've seen help a lot of brands doing successful implementations of generative AI solutions.
All right. Okay, moving a bit on. So, I mean, we're talking a bit about. So we've had discussions with other guests here on the show around predictive and even prescriptive analytics and making a lot of data-driven decisions based on insights. But with generative AI, is that more sort of a decisioning tool, or is it more a content production tool? Where do you see the generative AI as mostly applicable?
I see it in both of what you mentioned there and content creation. So if you think about predictive analytics or like adding, so you're adding data points to a specific customer based upon the other data points that they've given you, right?
Yeah.
To do so, you can also use generative AI. A simple solution that we're already using today is, say you have the person's name, just like the first name of the person. Say that's Rasmus.
Yeah.
Well, then you can feed it to a generative AI model and do a prediction on their gender. And they'll say, well, Rasmus, that's a male name. Well, then the AI model knows that, and it just outputs the gender.
Yeah.
That's a simple use case. You can take that to the extremes where you basically use the generative AI model's understanding of the real world to make stereotypical predictions.
Okay.
So that's one use case. Then there's decision making, and obviously there's content generation.
Yeah.
But I think it's strong everywhere.
Because I think in general you've sort of used sort of classic predictive analytics for doing the decisioning, but actually using generative AI as for that as well, and also using that to sort of enrich your customer profile with sort of fairly set properties. I think that's a good point, that it works well for that. It's probably easier to integrate as well.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's go back to the two main use cases that I know that you're working with at Alvas. So if one is sort of personalized email copy, where the AI writes individualized content based on, I don't know, basket abandonment, customer behavior, brand insights, whatever. And the other one is then we didn't cover that so much yet. So the productivity boosting copywriting. So basically AI helps draft like a broad email campaign, maybe in multiple languages, based on very minimal input. So I think it how can you say, perspectivizing this to the CX layers. I think the first one, producing the personalized email copy, definitely sits in the personalization layer. Where decisioning drives customer specific content. But the second one feels more like an efficiency play in the content layer. Do you see these use cases eventually merging, or do brands, could they adopt both approaches, or how do you see that play out?
Yeah. This is something I'm thinking about or reflecting a lot about in building our business right now, is whether we're going to have this, or how we're going to have this, I think is the better question. How we're going to have this AI efficiency boost where it can create content and create alterations and create anything you want to create. But then also adding the personalization layer. So the short answer is like how those two things are going to merge. I'm unsure yet. But one thing that I do think maybe leads us to that direction is that when we do one-to-one personalized communication, so in our use case, the abandoned cart email flow, that works really well when we have a lot of data on a profile and when we also have some sort of intent. So we know that they're interested in product X. Well, then we can write about product X in the communication.
Yeah.
It's a simple thing to do. When there's not a lot of data, or when there's not a clear intent on the profile, say
which
you want to
you're sending out broad newsletters to everybody, and a lot of them don't have any sign of intent. They're basically just email subscribers.
Exactly. When you're in that case, we've done tests at least trying to personalize the text. It's really hard, and the personalization more becomes like a rearrangement of words rather than actual relevancy. And when that's the case, well, then as a brand, you don't want to give up the control just to have words rearranged with the possibility of something going wrong when you know that there's no upside. It's fine to do so in the abandoned cart because there's a big upside and there's little risk. But in the newsletter, that doesn't really work out. So when we've tested that and seen that it doesn't really work to do one-to-one personalization on broad communication newsletters, then we're thinking more about, okay, we should probably just do segmented content.
Yeah, I was about to suggest that. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we sort of looked at, well, okay, what's the problem about doing segmented content? Say you have a subscriber base of 1 million different profiles. And you want to do like, maybe you want to do 20 or 50 or 100 different segmented versions of a piece of content. Well, then the real problem there is content production, because you can't just produce 20 different newsletters in half a day. So that's why we decided to go into the more of a agentic AI, have an AI that can produce a really high quality email newsletter, and then enable brands to just create newsletters in seconds, just when any idea pops into their head, create a newsletter. And when that is scaled out, well, it allows the brand to just do hyper segmented content.
Yeah, so basically there's like a middle road. So say right now you've decided to do sort of the very broad and very generic ones, but there's maybe a middle road where you say, okay, let's take that into the top 10 segments. So we take the default segment, obviously, and then we have like male, female audience that have some kind of engagement, and maybe some are shopping for, I don't know, hardware, some are shopping for software, some are shopping for dresses, some are shopping for shirts, or some are shopping for a specific brand or whatever. And that will then be reflected in the topic that segment will be getting of the newsletter.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. So is that because it becomes, you say it becomes inefficient? Is there also a cost element to this? So what is there must be like maybe a time lag, I could imagine. What are the things that are holding companies back from this? I could think of time lag. I could think of cost per calculation, or could be, I don't know, organizational inertia, or just not being too afraid to accidentally have the AI hallucinate an offer that you're not willing to actually put money behind. Or
So are you thinking in terms of doing like so when is it in terms of doing one-to-one personalization in newsletters, or what were you referring to?
Let's take the one-to-one personalization first. I think that's probably where do you? I could put it the other way around. Where do you get the most resistance? I would assume that it would be for the one-to-one personalized versions, or how is that?
Yeah. Initially, there were all the classics ones that you could imagine. First off, being like brand control. Is this going to be off brand? How do we make sure that it doesn't write something that's wrong?
Yeah.
Doesn't hallucinate. We've built both a product and a process for solving that, and we're not seeing too much resistance there. It's something that I encounter with every new customer, but we know how to solve that, and we can do it sort of frictionless. So it's not something that we're really thinking a lot about.
Maybe like really big brands that have like a heavy brand police. Probably not going to. I could imagine like brands like Lego or Arla or Pandora would have some hesitance towards this still, even though you say, we have perfect guardrails in place.
Yeah, of course there is. And I think that's more of just a matter of time. They just don't want to be first movers, and well, right now we are at a time where it's the first movers that are adopting this technology. So I think that's just a matter of building cases and building trust, which will happen organically over time. You referred to cost. I have quite an interesting insight into the cost of producing AI generated content.
You can use DeepSeek, I guess. That should be cheap.
Yeah. To give you very concrete numbers, when we started Alvas, we do our pricing in packages. And it's like you buy the smallest package, you get up to 50,000 emails that you can generate. When we started that, I think our pricing was $50 for 50,000 emails, or 5,000 emails, something like that. Our unit cost were 3 times higher than what we actually charged our customers. So we were losing money every time we generated an email.
Wow.
Our bet was that this cost were going to fall. It was going to fall quite fast, so that we at some point would have positive unit economics and it would all work out. What we didn't anticipate was how much it was going to fall, because since launching, so this is about a year and a half ago, the cost has come down 200x on the models that we're using. That is never seen before in like any sort of technology shift, that the cost is reduced by 200x in 1.5 years. And we're not using DeepSeek, so we're not using the cheapest models, which just underlines how much more of that.
So that's using, I suppose you're using OpenAI, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I listened to a podcast, I think it was by, I think it's the one called Marketing Pod, by the founders of Obsidian Digital, and they were talking about DeepSeek and how much cheaper that was compared to OpenAI and potentially also some of the other providers. So so cost is actually not a barrier anymore. That's what I hear you. So what is then holding people back? Is it organization? Are they scared of losing control, or is it technical challenges, or what do you think are the most sort of the biggest
Our
barriers?
From what we experience, it's skills, it's education, because working with generative AI is quite different from working with any sort of software tool that you've worked with in the past. So let's do a simple use case or study to sort of explain. Say you're working for an e-commerce brand, and let's say you're working for Coolshop.
Yeah.
You have an email system, and you need to set up an abandoned cart flow. Then the email system provides you with an interface where you can say, when someone abandons their cart, we're going to wait an hour and then we're going to send an email.
Yeah.
And you sort of have this deterministic logic where you can see what's going to happen, and you will make like the AI, like the system will always do that. And
Yeah.
if there's any error, it's probably because you as a human has set up some logic that isn't working as you thought it was going to.
Yeah.
And that's sort of easy to understand for the human brain. You can understand logic. What's hard to understand is when you work with generative AI, it's not always going to produce the same outcome. And also, when you're talking about personalization, you don't want it to produce the same outcome because you want it to be personalized for every recipient.
Yeah, at least.
So here is the challenge. It's you need to create a set of prompts and use a set of data that will be on brand and on message for 100,000 different products, 100,000 different profiles. But it's not going to be too much off where it produces something that's wrong or not on brand. So it has to hit that sweet spot of it's on brand, it's not saying anything wrong, but it's still creative and different and relevant.
Yeah.
And that is quite a hard challenge for someone that has not worked with generative AI before to get to, because you cannot say you build a set of prompts and you're testing it and you're constantly seeing how you make a change in the prompt and it changes the output. You do that maybe for some example profiles that could be 10 different example customers.
Yeah.
But you need to at some point set it live and start seeing what it produces to the 100,000 different customers before you can actually know what it's capable of producing, both in a good way and in a bad way.
Yeah.
And that is something that no one just has experience with doing yet.
Yeah.
Which holds back a lot of people, because at least
massive
I think
quality assurance task.
exactly, because we've gotten to a point where we know how to do it, and we also know how to educate our customer base on how to do it in a safe way. But that is one of our biggest challenges, and what we spend most time on is actually just educating the market on how to do this, because it's not an easy thing, and it's not something that you can necessarily just like do in 5 minutes. It's a skill that you need to build.
But I think in many ways that has the nature of the tasks that you are doing with content creation has changed from writing stuff or designing stuff to prompting and reviewing. So new tools are more about how can you make quality assurance at scale, because producing at scale is certainly not the option. It's the QA part that is maybe taking people down until and maybe it's only a passing phase. Maybe once we'll get to a point where we are comfortable with the AI letting run by itself. I'm assuming that you're seeing that with clients as well, that initially they're having a lot of hesitations or reservations as to, okay, so how wild can this go? Which sort of weird shit will, sorry my friend about my French, which weird stuff will be invented or hallucinated by the AI, and what will eventually come out there. But once they've seen it and they haven't got any complaints, then they let it run on autopilot. Or is it a passing phase?
It is, but we don't like to talk about it as a passing. We'd like to talk about it as a learning phase, because when it produces things that are either good or bad, it's just feedback to you as a person to learn what the AI is capable of, and then learn how how to tweak those prompts, because it can also write something that's like really, really good, where you sort of got surprised that it could even write that. And it doesn't do it all the time, but it does it some of the times. Well, then you as a person, you really want to double down on that. You want to tell the AI to do more like that, right? So it is definitely a phase, and we are also treating it like we're very upfront with our clients. We typically, when we onboard someone new, we do like a 3-month POC, 3 to 6 months, depending on they are, and we say like during the first month, it's all about getting the quality of the AI to a high enough level where you're really comfortable with it. So don't look at any performance numbers. That's going to be in month 2 and month 3. It's just month 1. You just want to learn how to prompt the AI.
Yeah, it's about not failing.
Exactly.
Okay. And I know you're focusing very much on like retailers and e-commerce, maybe even more specifically. That's kind of a niche or a sector or an industry where you've chosen to start. Any particular reason for starting there, or maybe some outlook on which industries that would be maybe more late into this? Can you put a bit of perspective on that?
Yeah. So if you think about what I said initially in terms of starting the business, we wanted to work with generative AI in combination with machine learning, where we could optimize the generative AI to become better over time. In order to have that, you need to have good attribution. And attribution is never perfect, but it's easier to attribute a sale of a t-shirt that cost $30 or 30 euros than it is to attribute the sale of some enterprise software which costs 100,000 euros per year. So we chose to go into a spot where you just have super short feedback cycles and have easy attribution. That is sort of like the primary reason. Then there is in e-commerce and retail e-commerce, there are a lot of standard systems, Shopify being extremely dominant, which leads to standardized data structures, which just makes it easier to build scalable solutions that work across different brands. So there are some technical standardization in the market, which makes it easier to build them.
How about legal companies? People are working within legal or in pharma or in. I could imagine those would be a bit more hesitant.
I mean, yes and no. When I think about, so obviously doing legal or pharma in autopilot, that's gonna take a while, because you need to have really much better quality assurance than you need to have in your email marketing. The mistake or the if something goes wrong, it's going to be much more costly, right? But you can also flip it around and say it the other way, where the cost of a lawyer is so high that it's a really big opportunity to do something which is just much cheaper and has the same quality. So yeah.
All right. Let's go back to one of the clients that you're working for. So Shaping New Tomorrow, and maybe say a few words on what they're doing, and then if you could move on to maybe some of the key learnings from what you've done together with them.
So I don't know how many international listeners there are, but just to make sure we're all aligned. Okay. So Shaping New Tomorrow is a men's fashion brand primarily. They're also starting to sell a lot to women, but men's fashion brand. They have some great pants, but they do sell all kinds of clothes to men. They were our first customer, so we got to do a lot of testing with them initially. But how they are working with AI is in all their retargeting flows. So abandoned cart, added to cart, viewed product, viewed collection, all those retargeting flows. They have an AI.
Bottom funnel triggers.
They have an AI write personalized messages to every single recipient, and they have that in all their. I think they're in 5 markets now. So that's another big benefit, especially in Europe, about generative AI is, well, if it can write well in Danish, it can write well in any language.
Yeah, I
And
guess. Try Greenlandic. Yeah.
so yeah. I was about to make a bad Trump joke, but I'm not gonna do that.
Oh no. Let's leave Trump out of this.
But yeah, so having it scale to different languages is another benefit. But essentially, they just have an AI that writes every single retargeting email that they send out, and they're seeing much better conversion from it. I think initially when we did the test, they did just like a standardized A/B test where they saw the revenue per email they sent out that doubled in the test where they used Alvas. Now when they're looking at it and looking like trailing 12 months back, so they've been doing it for more than a year, they see that their flows, the revenue per email sent, it has increased by 30%. So not quite double, but still like very significant.
So that's aware of initial sort of interest coming from the subscribers, then them getting used to, when I get this, then it's individualized, and that's very fun, but I still don't need the t-shirt. Or
there can be lots of reasons.
I guess you never know what's going on with the customer.
But one interesting fact that we actually saw, so this was with CoolShop, was that initially when they did the A/B test, they saw better metrics. I think I mentioned the increase in 55% conversion rate. But then they shifted to do 100% Alvas, and gradually month over month, they could see that open rates improved like 5%, 5%, 2%, 5%, not percentage points, but like 5%. So like a few percentage points. And then digging into it, we realized that CoolShop had the same email flows for a long time, and they were super generic. So their subscriber base is super loyal. They shop a lot of times at CoolShop, so they've sort of gotten used to the emails, right? They know that it's the abandoned cart email. But when the same person triggers the flow multiple times, they're gonna get different emails and different variations. So all of a sudden, that old, boring, generic content, which they were used to getting all the time, that sort of got thrown out, and you see slight increases in open rate over time because customers they don't expect the same one. So
that's interesting. Any other sort of organizational learnings that is worth sort of mentioning? Anything they took out of the way they were dealing with it internally, or how they were selling it to management, or I don't know, anything on that you care to share?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do when talking about AI solutions like this is show it, don't tell it.
Okay.
So when you're talking about AI generated emails and you want to sell that into management, well, then you can talk a lot about it, and depending on the manager, they're gonna be super excited, or they're gonna be like, well, are we gonna lose control?
Super skeptical.
Exactly. So being able to just show, like, here are 10 examples of what the AI could generate for our customers, before doing any like financial deal where it involves budget. That is typically what we've seen as the best way to get approval for an AI project. So that also means we've obviously made it super, super simple to just go in and create an account, demo 40-day free trial, whatever you need in order just to see what it produces.
Seeing is believing, I guess. All right, let's zoom out a bit. So looking at this sort of from a market perspective, where do you think the market is heading? Will we see like full automation of content, and or will human creativity always play a role, and which role?
So this also goes a little bit into talking about agents, which is super exciting. To answer your question super shortly, I think that there will be a lot of AI automation, and that a lot of the time spent creating the same content, just repurposing it, will shift to AI or to robots. That's also why I'm building the business. I believe in it. But I do think once once it comes to branding and when it comes to like telling a story over time which is consistently differentiated, that is where you need human creativity.
Yeah.
You need someone who understands like what are people feeling right now and what do people feel when they see this content, and that is something that the AI will just not be able to do as well. So I think there's going to be a need for both.
Yeah.
But to be very, very honest and very blunt, if you're sending out say 300 newsletters per year, and there's 365 days for an entire year,
Yeah.
you're
Some
not
of
going
our
to.
clients are indeed doing that.
Yeah, and it gets even crazier if we go overseas to the States. So a lot of that content is just repurposed and simplified newsletters that just needs to be
Crap
produced
already. Yeah.
And having that produced at 100 times cost reduction, or like 100 times cheaper than humans, I think there's just no getting around it. That is where the world is going.
So if they can just keep the same effectiveness, but the efficiency goes up like 200x, that's also worth pocketing the money saved there.
Yeah.
Right. Looking at sort of personalization in a broader perspective, I'm thinking, also next best actions, next best offers, product recommendations, and blah, blah, blah. Where do you see generative AI fitting into sort of the broad personalization landscape in like 3-5 years?
That's something I'm very curious about, because I'm honestly unsure.
Me too.
I obviously I know where it's going for retargeting emails, and I think I have a good understanding on where personalization is going in emails. You're going to have like for product recommendations, for like any sort of hard prediction recommendation, you're just going to have those as they are now, and probably get a little bit better.
Yeah, that's fairly commoditized. Yeah.
Yeah. For content, I think I think it's easy to say in all automated emails where you have any sort of intent from a customer, that's going to be individualized. In your newsletters, you're going to have segmented content, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
What I'm not sure about is like on-site, and if you have an app, like what's going to be in that, because I'm not sure whether it's how that's going to work out. Obviously, there's some technical challenges like latency. When we create an email, we can generate it 10 minutes before it's being sent, and the customer doesn't notice. But having someone just show up on your website and then on the spot creating content, on the fly,
generate personalized variants of a product description.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be solved for sure, but it's still a technical problem.
But there's also the SEO. I mean, at least as things are now, you have like page load times that are extremely important, and you have Google indexing your pages. And if there is never one static page, but everything is completely individualized, I think it kind of breaks the old way of working with search engine optimization. So there may be a conflict here that is at least big now, but it may change over time when everybody is getting their recommendations from like Perplexity or other sort of AI-based engines.
And then I think there is also, there's also thinking about the customer experience and how basically when you do communication, it's like, how can we share information in the most optimal way that gets the customer to do what we hopefully want them to do.
Yeah.
And in an email, you can play around with text and images. Obviously, you can do all sorts of fancy stuff, but a lot of the time it comes down to what does the subject line say and what does the preview line say. That's and the only option you have there is text. There's nothing else you can do there.
Emojis,
but
maybe.
And I would classify that as text.
Yeah.
But on a website, you have so many more opportunities. You have visuals to play around with. You have effects. You have other things than just text.
Navigation, overlays, hiding or showing specific buttons of
Exactly.
functionality and nudges and
So maybe one thing could be, instead of its personalized text where it's individualized, it might be that you have 100 different product images, and then you just do ranked based, ranked based image display. I don't know what you want to call it, but where you figure out what images is good to display to each individual customer, and then you make sure that those images are the ones that are being displayed to the specific customer.
Then that's a bit more like, I think that's a recommendation feature. So you're ranking the specific product images in much the same way as you're ranking the products in the product feed.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, but I know that some are using generative AI to, for instance, determine, I think it's pretty maybe it's not generative AI, but at least they're doing like multivariate versions of the show covers for specific shows on Netflix. So they're showing Narcos, and they are the way that they are sort of the banner or the image used for promoting that show is different depending on different locales or even different individuals. I know they're experimenting with dynamic creatives for that. Probably not Gen AI produced, but still. All right. Misconceptions. There must be some misconceptions because you're meeting a lot of people. You're talking about generative AI out there all the time. What is? I mean, are there any big misconceptions, and what is, I don't know, the biggest misconception about Gen AI maybe today?
So I think the first one is what we've already talked about, is we just lose all control and the AI will go off brand. That's something you can solve. You just need to know how to prompt it and how to roll it out. So we've talked about that. I don't think I want to spend more time there. Another misconception is more data is better. So let's just fill in as much data as we can into a prompt, because that's going to work better than the AI will figure out what's good. And generally, when you talk about machine learning or building neural networks or building models, well, then yes, more data is better. But when you are working with generative AI and you are trying to mitigate the risk of hallucination, then more data is not better. You actually want to start off with as little data as possible and see if that is sufficient enough for you to get to a good quality output.
Interesting.
So maybe I can explain a little bit further. Say you want to write an abandoned cart email, and you have some product information. It might be that you have bought, say, a laptop from a supplier, and the product data or the product description is just directly from the supplier. So it might be super, super long. Say it can be like 5 PDF pages or whatever, where you have a lot of information. Exactly. Feeding all of that information into a prompt where you tell the AI to write an email, it might leave it to write about all kinds of weird features about that computer.
Makes sense.
That you don't want it to. And the way to solve that is to figure out, well, if you just gave the AI the product name, would it actually be able to just write a better email? And the chances are that it's probably going to be a yes, because it's going to be super short and super simple, and at least in an email context, that will work better. So that's one of the reasons why. The second reason is, and that gets a little bit more technical, the second reason why you want to limit the amount of data that you put into the prompt is because these generative AI models, they have the more context you give them, the less likely they are to follow all the rules or the instructions that you give them.
I noticed that.
You've probably noticed how if you use ChatGPT and you have like a super long chain, at some point it's just going to start wobbling around and not being able to answer your questions. And that's not something you want when you're trying to scale something that creates 100,000 different emails.
Yeah.
So we've obviously built that entirely into our platform and made it simple and scalable. But that is one of the misconceptions that I see brands thinking about is, what if we just give it all the data that we have on a profile and we feed in, for example, all previous orders that the profile has made the past 5 years in order to make some really amazing email.
Yeah.
And chances are that it's probably going to write something that's confusing for the recipient, or that it's going to start hallucinating, mixing things together.
Yeah.
And it's not going to focus on what's important for that customer in that specific time.
All right. Great insights, Alvas. We're drawing towards an end here. There's one question that I always ask people, and that's about like favorite real world use case of generative AI. Which is yours?
So I mentioned how I moved to San Francisco and was there for half a year when we started the company. When I did that, I didn't know how to code. I knew I wanted to build a technology company, but I could not write a single line of code. With the help of ChatGPT, I learned how to code, and I built a prototype, and I launched that prototype in 14 days. So that has completely changed my life. Obviously, I've built this business now, and we're going strong and everything, but also just being able to write code that I couldn't before is probably the most life-changing use case of AI I've seen and experienced.
Beautiful. Yeah. Great. Thank you for sharing all the insights, Villads. That has been extremely interesting to be a part of. And so if people want to learn more about you or learn more about Alvas, where do they go and what do they do?
So I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So you can find me my name is Villads Leth on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
And then you'll see the small title, Future Unicorn Founder. But other than that, you can always write to me on my email, Villads@Alvas.ai, or if you're curious about Alvas or how we are working well with Agilic, you can go to our website, Alvas.ai.
Yeah, so ALVAS.ai. Yeah, great. All right, thank you so much for participating in this. It's been fun and entertaining, hopefully. And to the listeners and even the viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. And I hope that I'll see you another time at the Hello First Name podcast. Remember that all the stuff that we've been talking about here can be downloaded. There's an abstract of the book Hello First Name. There are the CX layers as a model, so you can use that already in a presentation with your boss next week and sound even more clever than you do today. And everything like that will be in the show notes. There's also the option of downloading the book as an audiobook if you like to listen to it while you're on the go. So until next time, bye-bye. You've been listening to yet another episode of the Hello First Name podcast. Remember that all models discussed in this podcast can be downloaded and are free to use. The original book, Hello First Name, can likewise be downloaded as either the full audiobook or as a written abstract. All links are in the show notes. The podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, the omnichannel marketing automation platform, Agilic. Visit www.agilic.com for more information.